My name is Evelyn Hart, and I'm 55 years old. If you had asked me a few years ago, I would have said my family was solid, ordinary, and blessed. My husband Daniel and I spent our whole lives building a home we thought was good and honest. We had two sons, Jared, our firstborn, at 28, and Nathan, our younger one, at 25. We weren't rich, but we were proud. Daniel worked as an engineer, methodical and calm. I taught literature at a local high school. We had simple dinners, long drives, movie nights, and arguments that always ended with laughter. I believed our family bond was unshakable until I learned that love can hide cracks deep enough to destroy everything. Looking back, I can see where things began to slip. It started small, those little shadows between brothers that every parent dismisses as normal rivalry. When Jared made the school football team, Nathan sulked for days. I remember sitting him down at the kitchen table, brushing his hair away from his eyes and saying softly, "Sweetheart, your brother's older. He's had more time to practice. You'll have your moment too." He nodded, pretending to understand. But in that small nod was something I failed to notice. Not resentment exactly, but an ache, the kind that festers quietly. Later, the balance reversed. Jared, my shy, bookish boy, struggled with confidence, especially around girls. Nathan, on the other hand, was born with charm. He'd flash a grin, say the right thing, and people, especially girls, would melt. Jared once confessed to me that he envied that ease. "It's like people just like him without trying," he said bitterly. I laughed it off, told him everyone blooms at their own pace. But envy is a silent poison. It doesn't announce itself, it just sits there waiting. Still, despite the usual bumps, we were a happy family. We celebrated birthdays with homemade cake and off-key singing. We argued about politics, gossiped about neighbors, and pretended we'd never hurt one another. I thought our small imperfections made us real, made us strong. When Jared left for college, something changed. My quiet, introverted son began to open up. He joined clubs, started traveling, even learned to dance. When he came home for the holidays, his junior year, he walked in with a new kind of light in his eyes. And behind that light was a young woman, Haley. I remember the first time I saw her. She had soft auburn hair and eyes that smiled before her lips did, the kind of girl who made people feel instantly comfortable. She shook my hand with both of hers, a little nervous, a little polite. "Mrs. Hart," she said, "I've heard so much about you." Something about the way Jared looked at her I knew. She wasn't just another girlfriend. She was the one. Over dinner, she asked about our family traditions, about the way Daniel and I met, even about Nathan, who wasn't home that evening. She listened with genuine curiosity, laughing at the right moments, comforting Jared when he tripped over a sentence. It was impossible not to like her. That night, after she left, Jared came into the kitchen where I was washing dishes. He leaned against the counter, his cheeks still flushed. "Mom," he said, "she's it. She's the one I'm going to marry." I smiled, but Daniel, ever the cautious one, looked up from his book and said, "You're young, Jared. Just take your time. You both have years ahead of you." Jared rolled his eyes the way sons do when they think their parents are too old to understand love. Over the next 2 years, Haley became part of our family. She came for Christmas, helped me bake pies, and even joined our summer trip to the lake. Everyone loved her, even Nathan, when he finally met her during one of his rare visits home from college. But I remember something now that I didn't then. The first time Haley met Nathan, he looked at her just a little too long. It was a fraction of a second, a flicker of curiosity, admiration maybe, but it stayed with me. At the time, I brushed it off. She was beautiful and Nathan was charming. That was all, or so I told myself. A year later, Jared and Haley began to have problems. He came home less often, sounded tired on the phone. Whenever I asked how things were, he gave me the same answer. "Just rough patches, Mom. We'll be fine." But I knew he wasn't fine. Mothers always know. Still, I stayed silent, telling myself that grown children need space, not interference. Then, one winter night, I got a call from Jared. His voice broke when he said, "It's over, Mom. She's gone." I sat on the floor of the kitchen, my knees giving out under me. I wanted to fix it, to tell him that heartbreak passes, that first love always feels like the end of the world, but isn't. But the words stuck in my throat. For months after that, he was a shell of himself. Daniel and I visited him often, bringing food, pretending everything was normal. Sometimes he'd talk, mostly he wouldn't. When he finally began to heal, started dating again. I thank God. And Nathan. He was living carefree, bouncing between jobs and girlfriends, telling me not to worry. He'd call late at night, drunk sometimes, laughing about how Jared was too serious. "Life's short, Mom," he'd say. "Why does Jared always make it look like a punishment?" I scolded him for being insensitive. He'd apologize quickly, but not sincerely. Even then, something in his tone felt off. Now, sitting here years later, I replay those conversations like scenes from a movie. I can't pause. All the warning signs were there. The jealousy, the subtle resentment, the distance between my sons. I saw it all, and I chose to believe it was nothing. Because believing otherwise would have meant admitting that love wasn't enough to keep them good. That evening, I found an old photo, Jared at 12, Nathan at 9, standing shoulder to shoulder, their arms slung around each other's necks, faces covered in ice cream and mischief. I used to look at that picture and smile. Now it just hurts. If only I had known that the day Jared brought Haley home, smiling proud, full of hope, would be the day my family began to unravel. If only I had known that love could destroy what hate never could. When Haley entered Jared's life, it was as if someone had turned on a light inside him. My quiet, reserved boy became talkative, adventurous, almost radiant. He called more often, laughed more loudly, and even told me once, "Mom." For the first time, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Haley had that effect on people. She was easy to like. She volunteered at an animal shelter, wrote poetry, and had the kind of calm presence that could settle a storm. Even Daniel, who didn't trust easily, said one night after dinner, "She reminds me of you when we first met, a good heart, but stronger than she looks." I remember that line now because it echoes differently in hindsight. For a long time, everything looked perfect. Jared would bring Haley over for family dinners, and Nathan, whenever he was home, would join in. The two of them got along surprisingly well, laughing, teasing, sharing jokes across the table. I used to watch them and think, my boys have finally grown into men who love and respect each other. I was wrong. Looking back, I realized Nathan watched Haley too closely. Not lustfully, not obviously, but with a kind of fascination that was hard to place. When Jared told a story, Nathan's eyes didn't stay on him. They flickered toward her, reading her reactions instead. Once at Christmas, when Haley laughed too hard at something Nathan said, I caught a flash of something on Jared's face, a flicker of insecurity that he tried to mask by raising his glass. I wish I had asked. I wish I had said something, anything. But mothers see what they want to see, and I wanted to believe my family was still whole. 2 years passed, and Jared began to change. He stopped visiting. On weekends, stopped calling as often. His texts became short, polite. Haley came around less and less, and when she did, her laughter sounded forced. One evening, while I was folding laundry, Daniel came into the room with his phone in hand. "Have you noticed Jared's been distant lately?" he asked quietly. I nodded. "I think he's struggling, maybe work stress." He frowned. "You sure it's not something else?" I shrugged, pretending to believe my own lie. Weeks later, I called Jared out of the blue. He picked up on the third ring, sounding tired. "Sweetheart," I said gently, "how are you and Haley?" There was a long silence, broken only by his breathing. Then softly he said, "We're figuring things out." That was the last conversation we had about her. A month later, I got a text that shattered me. "Mom, we broke up. Please don't ask why." He didn't answer any calls after that. For a while, Daniel and I tried to visit him. He looked like a ghost, thinner, quieter eyes hollow. When I hugged him, I could feel the tension in his shoulders like he was holding something in. He refused to talk about her. I didn't push. It took Jared nearly a year to start breathing again. He began dating someone new. Mara, a kind woman with a steady smile. When he finally brought her home, the air felt lighter. I told Daniel that maybe the storm had passed. But storms have a way of circling back. Nathan, meanwhile, was living his own chaotic version of adulthood. Different girlfriends, short stints at jobs he claimed were not a good fit, and an endless cycle of confidence and regret. Still, he visited us often loud, carefree, sometimes drunk, always full of stories. I remember one visit vividly. It was late. Daniel had gone to bed. Nathan and I were sitting on the porch, the night humming with crickets. He took a long drag from his cigarette and said suddenly, "Mom, do you think people can love two people at once?" I looked at him, startled. "Why would you ask that?" He shrugged. "Just wondering. Feels like sometimes the heart doesn't follow rules." I laughed uneasily, thinking he was being poetic, maybe thinking about some fleeting relationship. If only I had known. Months later, Nathan called and said he wanted to introduce us to someone special. "She's the one, Mom," he said, voice brimming with excitement. "You'll love her." For the first time in years, I felt genuinely hopeful. I told Daniel, and we spent an entire weekend cleaning, cooking, setting the table with my mother's silver. I remember laying out the blue plates, the same ones we used the first night Jared brought Haley home. It felt symbolic, like a full circle. I didn't realize how cruel that circle would be. When the doorbell rang, I called out Daniel, "They're here." I smoothed my blouse, smiled, and opened the door. And the world just stopped. Haley stood there holding Nathan's hand. For a second, I couldn't move. My brain refused to connect the dots. Jared's ex, my younger son, and the word fiancé that slipped out of Nathan's mouth like a knife. "Mom," he said proudly, "this is Haley. We're getting married." Daniel came up behind me and froze. His face went pale, his jaw tightening. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. Haley smiled weakly. "Mrs. Hart," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I know this is unexpected." Unexpected, that word echoed like an insult. I tried to speak, but nothing came out. The air felt heavy, the room spinning. My husband's voice finally broke the silence, sharp, disbelieving. "Does Jared know about this?" Nathan's tone shifted, instantly defensive. "Of course he knows. He's fine with it." I turned to look at Haley. She flinched. That was enough for me to know the truth. Daniel's hands clenched at his sides. "You're lying," he said quietly. Nathan's eyes burned with anger. "You just don't want me to be happy, because you've always loved Jared more." His words sliced through me. I opened my mouth to answer, but before I could, Daniel's voice thundered, "Enough!" The house filled with tension so thick it was almost visible. Nathan shouted something. I don't even remember now. Something about double standards, about us being hypocrites. I just stood there frozen. Then, for the first time in my life, I did something I never thought I could. I went upstairs, grabbed every important document Nathan owned, and threw them at his feet. "Get out," I said, my voice shaking but firm, "and don't come back." He looked stunned. "You're choosing him over me." I met his eyes. "I'm choosing what's right over what's shameful." Haley tried to speak, but Daniel cut her off coldly. "You've done enough damage." They left, slamming the door behind them. The silence afterward was unbearable. I could still smell Haley's perfume in the air, a ghost of the girl I once thought would be my daughter-in-law, now tangled in betrayal. When I finally found my voice again, I turned to Daniel and whispered, "He's gone." Daniel looked at me, pain etched deep in his face. He was gone the moment he brought her here. That night I didn't sleep. I just sat by the window staring at the dark, waiting for dawn. Because deep down, I knew it was only the beginning. The next morning, I woke up to a silence that felt heavier than grief. The house still smelled like the roast I had cooked for a dinner that never happened. Plates sat untouched on the table. Daniel hadn't said a word all night. When I looked at him, his face was drawn, his eyes hollow. He finally broke the silence. "We need to tell Jared." I nodded. My stomach turned as I reached for my phone. My hands were trembling so hard I could barely press his name. When Jared answered, his voice sounded calm but tired, the kind of tired that only heartbreak teaches you. "Mom," he said, "everything okay?" "No," I whispered. "It's not." There was a pause. "What happened?" My voice cracked. "It's Nathan. He came home last night. With someone." He waited. "Who?" I swallowed hard. "Haley." Silence. Then a slow, quiet breath, not surprised, not shocked, just resigned. "I know," he said softly. I felt my heart stop. "You knew." He sighed. "She cheated on me, Mom. With him." The words sliced straight through me. I couldn't breathe. Jared continued, his voice calm, almost detached, like he had rehearsed this conversation in his head for years. "I found out months after we broke up. At first I thought she'd just moved on quickly. Then one night Nathan called me drunk. Said he was sorry. Said he didn't mean for it to happen. That's when I knew." I pressed my hand to my mouth, feeling the tears burn my eyes. "Why didn't you tell us?" He hesitated. "Because I didn't want you to hate him. He's still your son." That broke me. I started sobbing quietly at first, then uncontrollably. "You didn't deserve this, Jared. You didn't deserve any of it." He was silent for a moment, then said, "Mom, please don't do anything rash. It's over. I've made peace with it." But I hadn't, and I never would. When I hung up, Daniel was standing by the doorway, his fists clenched. He knew, he said through gritted teeth. Jared knew, and he still protected that boy. I nodded, unable to speak. By the afternoon, the news had reached someone else, my father. He called me furious. "Evelyn, what on earth is going on?" "Nathan told me you and Daniel refused to attend his wedding." What is wrong with you? His voice was sharp, disappointed, the tone he used when I was a teenager sneaking out after curfew. Dad, I began, you don't understand. I understand that you're punishing your own son for being happy, he snapped. Do you have any idea how heartless that sounds? You raised him to be independent, and now you're turning your back on him. My throat went dry. I glanced at Daniel, who shook his head slowly. Dad, I said softly, before you judge us, please listen. You don't know the whole story. He huffed, impatient. Then enlighten me. So I did. I told him everything, how Jared had met Haley, how we'd all adored her, how Nathan had stayed distant during their relationship, but started showing interest afterward. I told him about the night Nathan brought Haley home, about Jared's heartbreak, and finally about the confession. There was silence on the other end. Then my father spoke, his voice trembling. Evelyn, is this true? I wish it weren't. He exhaled a long, exhausted sound, and Nathan said nothing. He lied, said Jared was fine with it. Another long silence. Then quietly he said, I need to make a call. When I hung up, Daniel came and sat beside me. He didn't speak, just held my hand. For the first time since the night before, I felt a strange sense of calm. Maybe it was relief, the kind that comes when truth finally replaces confusion. The next morning, my father called again. His voice was steady this time, but cold. I spoke to Nathan. He tried to lie to me, but I caught him. I told him I'm withdrawing the wedding funds. I froze. What? He continued. That boy has no shame. He tried to guilt-trip me. Said I was breaking a promise, that I wasn't a man of my word if I didn't give him the money. I told him he lost that right the moment he betrayed his brother. I didn't know whether to feel proud or sad. My father had always been a man of integrity, but hearing him so angry at his own grandson felt surreal. Then he said something that stunned me even more. I'm giving the money to Jared instead. Daniel's eyebrows shot up. You don't have to do that, he said. I know, my father replied, but I want to reward decency. Nathan will learn what it feels like to lose everything by his own doing. I didn't argue. I knew my father, once he made a moral decision, there was no undoing it. That evening, my phone buzzed with messages from extended family members, cousins, uncles, aunts. A long, formal text had been forwarded to everyone. It was from my father. To all family members, I have always loved my grandchildren equally. However, I recently discovered that my grandson Nathan's relationship with Haley began while she was still in a committed relationship with his brother Jared. I will not fund a wedding built on betrayal. I'm redirecting Nathan's trust fund to Jared and will not attend the ceremony. Let this serve as a statement of truth and principle. I read the message 3 times, my heart pounding harder with each line. Daniel sat beside me, eyes wide. He actually did it, he muttered. The fallout was immediate. Within hours, relatives started calling, some in disbelief, some in outrage, others whispering sympathy. Nathan's phone, I'm sure, must have been ringing off the hook. By nightfall, I received one more message from my sister. Evelyn. What happened? Is this true? I simply wrote back, every word. I stared at my reflection in the darkened window, feeling both drained and vindicated. I didn't want to destroy Nathan's reputation, but the truth had a way of doing that on its own. Somewhere deep inside, I still wanted to believe he'd show up, apologize, and ask for forgiveness. That maybe there was a sliver of the boy who once cried when he broke his brother's toy and begged me to fix it. But that boy was long gone. All that remained was a man who chose desire over blood and a mother who had to live with the shame of calling him her son. When morning came, I half expected Nathan to call and apologize, to tell me the whole thing was a misunderstanding, that he'd lost control, that he regretted everything. But the phone stayed silent. Instead, by noon, the fallout began. My sister, my cousins, even Daniel's colleagues, everyone had received my father's message, and the reactions were instant. Some were furious that private family matters had gone public. Others sent quiet messages of support, but the one voice missing from all of it was Nathan's. It wasn't until late evening that the phone finally rang. His name flashed across the screen. Evelyn. Daniel said, "Don't answer it." I hesitated, but curiosity and maternal instinct are a dangerous mix. I picked up. "Mom." Nathan's voice cracked through the receiver, thick with anger and tears. "Why did you tell him? Why did you tell Grandpa?" "Because he deserved to know the truth," I said evenly. "You ruined my life," he shouted. "You had no right." I closed my eyes. "Nathan, you did that yourself." He laughed bitterly. "You think this is about right or wrong? It's about love. Haley and I love each other. Why can't you see that?" "Love," I whispered. "Love built on betrayal isn't love, Nathan. It's self-indulgence." His breathing grew uneven. "You've always taken Jared's side. Always. He could do no wrong in your eyes." "That's not true." "Yes, it is," he screamed. You've made it clear your golden boy can break hearts, and you'll still cradle him like a saint. But I find happiness, and suddenly I'm the sinner. I wanted to yell back. I wanted to tell him that this wasn't about Jared's perfection, it was about his choices. But I realized then that Nathan didn't want to understand. He wanted justification, and I couldn't give it to him. So I said quietly, I love you, Nathan, but I cannot respect what you've done. There was a long pause. Then a cold voice I barely recognized said, Then I guess you've lost a son. The line went dead. I didn't realize I was shaking until Daniel gently took the phone from my hand and set it down. He'll come around, he said. Though neither of us believed it. That night I couldn't sleep. I went downstairs and sat at the dining table staring at the same blue plates from that cursed dinner. The faint hum of the refrigerator was the only sound. Daniel joined me, a while later, poured 2 glasses of water, and sat opposite. He blames us, I said finally. He's desperate, Daniel replied. He'll say anything to shift the guilt. But he meant it, I whispered. He meant every word. Daniel sighed. Then maybe this is what he needs to face consequences. Your father did what we couldn't. I nodded slowly. Dad did what I didn't have the courage to. Because deep down, I'd spent years protecting my sons from pain, even when they caused it. 3 days later, we got another call from my father. His tone was different this time, softer, but resolute. I've spoken to both of them, he said. Nathan begged, but I told him my decision stands. The trust fund is Jared's now. I hesitated. Dad, are you sure? I'm old Evelyn, not foolish. I can forgive many things, but not deceit within family. I raised you to value loyalty. Nathan has lost that right. He paused for a moment. I'm also telling the rest of the family what happened. People should know why I'm cutting ties. Daniel frowned. Dad, are you sure that's wise? Jared doesn't want this public. I already asked him, my father said. He said if this truth protects others from making the same mistake, then so be it. That answer didn't surprise me. Jared always had a quiet strength, the kind that didn't need to humiliate to prove a point. But I wasn't ready for the next storm. Within 24 hours, the family group chat erupted. Screenshots, whispers, sympathy, judgment, everyone wanted a piece of the scandal. Nathan's name became gossip. Haley's too. My sister Patricia called in tears. Evelyn, is it true? All of it. Yes, I said softly. She cursed under her breath. That boy. After everything Jared did for him, he deserves what's coming. I didn't respond, because hearing someone else condemn my son, even when he deserved it, still felt like being cut open. 2 days later, Nathan showed up at our doorstep. His eyes were bloodshot, his clothes rumpled as though he hadn't slept in days. Please, he said, we need to talk. Daniel crossed his arms. You've said enough. Nathan ignored him and looked straight at me. She left me, Mom. His voice cracked. Haley called off the wedding. My heart clenched despite everything. I'm sorry to hear that, I said carefully. He laughed bitterly. You're not sorry? You're happy this happened? I'm not happy, I said, but I'm not surprised either. He stepped closer, eyes wild. You and Grandpa humiliated me. Everyone knows Haley's family won't even talk to her. Her parents disowned her. Do you understand what you've done? What we've done, Daniel snapped. You mean what you did? Nathan glared at him. You think you're some saint? You're nothing but a self-righteous hypocrite. Enough, I shouted. My voice shook the air between us. Stop blaming everyone else for your choices. He froze, stunned. Maybe it was the first time I'd ever raised my voice at him like that. I took a step forward. You broke your brother's heart. You brought shame into this home, and you expect us to pretend it's love. He blinked, tears welling in his eyes. You've already chosen him. I've chosen what's right, I said. And right now, that isn't you. Nathan's face hardened. You'll regret this, he whispered. Both of you. He turned and walked out, slamming the door behind him. I stood there for a long time, staring at the door. For the first time, I realized what true loss felt like. Not death, not distance, but the slow disintegration of love. Daniel came up behind me and placed a hand on my shoulder. You did what you had to do, he said quietly. But that night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't stop thinking. Was I a good mother who stood for what's right, or a failure who destroyed her own child? The line between the two had never felt thinner. It's strange how quickly a family's name can become a scandal. By the end of the week, everyone knew. Every cousin, every aunt, every family friend who once sent Christmas cards now whispered the heart's name with pity or disgust. Daniel stopped answering the phone altogether. I deleted social media after one too many, so sorry for what you're going through, messages from people who only wanted to gossip. Jared stayed quiet, avoiding the chaos completely. And Nathan, well, Nathan disappeared. Then one morning there was a knock on the door. When I opened it, Nathan was standing there, his face pale and eyes bloodshot. He looked like he hadn't eaten or slept in days. "Mom," he said, his voice breaking, "you've ruined me." I stepped aside silently, letting him in. Daniel stayed near the stairs, arms folded. Nathan paced the living room like a caged animal. "Do you even know what you've done?" "Haley's gone. Her parents kicked her out. Everyone at her job knows everyone at mine knows. I can't go anywhere without being looked at like a monster." I forced myself to meet his eyes. "You are not a monster, Nathan, but what you did was monstrous." He stopped pacing and turned toward me, his expression crumbling. "I didn't mean for this to happen. I didn't plan to hurt anyone." "Intentions don't erase actions," Daniel said coldly. Nathan's jaw clenched. "You think I don't know that. You think I wanted to destroy everything." He laughed, a hollow, broken sound. "I loved her. She made me feel seen for the first time in my life. You have no idea what that's like to always be second place in your own family." That last sentence cut deep. "Second place," I repeated quietly. "Nathan, we've loved you just as much as Jared." He scoffed. "Really?" "Because it never felt that way. He was the golden boy, the scholar, the one you bragged about to everyone. I was just the kid you kept hoping would grow up one day." I took a shaky breath. "You're twisting this into a story where you're the victim. But this," I gestured around the room to the empty space where our family had once felt whole. "This is what you created." He looked at me, eyes glistening. "And what about you, Mom? What did you create? You went behind my back and destroyed my wedding. You turned Grandpa against me. You told the whole world I'm a cheater. You don't even see what you've done." Daniel stepped forward, his voice steady but deadly calm. "You want to talk about betrayal? You slept with your brother's girlfriend. You lied to us. You lied to him. You lied to yourself. What exactly did you expect us to do?" "Bake you a wedding cake." Nathan's face twisted with anger and shame. "I expected you to still be my parents," he said, his voice breaking. That was the moment my heart cracked. Not for what he said, but for how much he believed it. I could see that lost little boy in him again, the one who used to cling to my leg when thunder scared him. But that child was gone, buried under pride and denial. I reached for his hand, but he pulled away. "I can't forgive you," he whispered. "I'm not asking you to," I said softly. "But one day you'll have to forgive yourself because right now you're punishing everyone but the one person who deserves it." He stared at me for a long moment. Then without another word, he turned and left. The sound of the door closing behind him felt final this time. A week later, my father called again. He sounded older, tired, but unwavering. I told the family everything he said. Nathan tried to call me again, begging for another chance. I told him forgiveness isn't something you beg for, it's something you earn. And he hasn't even started. I wanted to tell him to stop, to let it rest. But deep down, I knew he was right. Later that evening, my sister Patricia called. "Evelyn, I'm so sorry," she said. "We're not going to the wedding." "There isn't one anymore," I replied. She hesitated. "I know. Haley called it off." Apparently, after my father's message spread, Haley's family turned their backs on her. Her parents, furious at the humiliation, demanded she cut ties with Nathan. Her friends, many of whom had once been close to Jared, stopped replying to her calls. Overnight, she became an outcast. And Nathan? He spiraled. He tried calling Jared multiple times, but Jared refused to pick up. He sent me messages, long, rambling ones filled with anger and guilt. Then finally, silence. Days passed, then weeks, until one afternoon as I was watering the plants, I heard footsteps on the porch. When I turned, Jared was standing there. He looked calmer, older somehow, like a man who had carried pain long enough to make peace with it. He hugged me, and for a long time I couldn't let go. "Mom," he said quietly, "don't worry about Nathan anymore." "I can't help it," I whispered. "He's still my son." "I know," Jared said, "but sometimes loving someone doesn't mean saving them. It means stepping back and letting them face what they've done." His words were gentle, but they carried the kind of wisdom born from suffering. We sat together on the porch, the same spot where Nathan had once asked me if people could love two at once. I thought of how different that night had felt, how innocent I believed our world still was. Now the silence between us wasn't peaceful. It was permanent. A few days later, Daniel handed me his phone. "You should see this," he said. It was a post from Haley's account, a long apology. She admitted to everything, to betraying Jared, to the shame of what she'd done. At the end, she wrote, "Some mistakes can't be undone, but they can stop here. I hope the people I hurt find peace, even if I never do." The comments were brutal. She had made her confession public, but it only fueled more gossip. Still, a part of me felt something almost like pity. She was paying her price too. Daniel deleted the app. It's not our concern anymore, he said. He was right. But that night, as I lay awake, I couldn't stop thinking about Nathan, where he was, what he was doing, if he was safe. I knew Daniel would call it weakness, but a mother's heart doesn't shut off when her child sins. It just breaks differently each time. And yet, beneath the pain there was something else too, a grim, quiet relief. Because for the first time in months, I no longer had to pretend. The truth, ugly, raw, destructive as it was finally out, and I could finally breathe again. It's strange how a mother's love can die quietly, not with rage, but with acceptance. It has been almost a month since Nathan walked out of our house for the last time. The days blend together, now mornings of quiet, tea afternoons spent pretending to read, and nights that stretch too long for sleep to come easily. Daniel goes about his routines with a kind of mechanical calm, but I can see it in the way his shoulders slump, the way he lingers at the window whenever headlights pass by, as though he half expects to see Nathan's car pulling into the driveway. But it never does. The world has gone back to its rhythm, even if ours hasn't. Jared visits every Sunday. He and Mara often bring groceries or help Daniel fix little things around the house. Their laughter fills the space, but sometimes, when Jared catches me looking at him too long, he reaches for my hand and says softly, "Don't think about it, Mom." As if not thinking about it were ever an option. Haley hasn't been seen since her public apology. A cousin mentioned she moved out of state trying to start over. Maybe she will. Maybe she won't. I don't wish her pain. I just hope she learns what loyalty truly costs when you throw it away. Nathan, though. Nathan is still missing from everyone's radar. No one knows where he's gone. My father has tried to reach him a few times, not out of reconciliation, but concern. Every attempt ends the same way, no response. I'd like to believe that he's alive, that somewhere he's trying to make sense of what he's done. But sometimes in the middle of the night, when the house creaks and the air feels too still, I wonder if maybe he's simply vanished from the world we all broke for him. Daniel says we shouldn't talk about him anymore. Dwelling on ghosts only keeps them haunting, he told me once, voice flat. He means well. But mothers don't stop being mothers because the world demands they forget. Love doesn't vanish. It corrodes, changes shape, becomes quieter. But it stays. Last week, Jared came by alone. He found me sitting on the porch, staring at the horizon. The air smelled like rain and the clouds were low and heavy. He sat down beside me. "You still check your phone every morning." I smiled faintly. Old habits die hard. He nodded, staring straight ahead. "You know I don't hate him anymore," he said quietly. "I used to, but now I just pity him." I turned toward him. "That's Grace Jared." He shook his head. "No, Mom, it's exhaustion. Hate takes too much energy." We sat in silence for a long time. The sky turned gold, then gray, then deep blue. When he left, he hugged me tightly and whispered, "You did the right thing." But doing the right thing doesn't always feel right. Sometimes it feels like bleeding slowly over years. A few days later, while cleaning the attic, I found an old photo album, one I hadn't opened in years. The leather cover was cracked from heat and dust rose in soft clouds when I lifted it. On the first page was a picture of Jared and Nathan at the beach, both barefoot and laughing, their faces tanned and freckled. Nathan was about 6, Jared 9. Daniel stood behind them, trying to hold the camera steady, while I ran toward them from the water hair plastered to my face. We looked so happy. I traced their faces with my fingertips. "Where did we go wrong?" I whispered into the still air. Maybe it wasn't about wrong or right. Maybe it was about blindness, the way love blinds you. Not to evil, but to possibility. I had spent years believing my sons were good men because I wanted them to be, and maybe in some small way they still are, just lost each in their own direction. That night, I couldn't sleep again. I went out to the garden barefoot, letting the cool earth ground me. The stars were faint, half hidden behind the city glow. Daniel came out after a while, wrapped in his old robe. "You're thinking again," he murmured. I never stopped. He came beside me, his arm slipping around my shoulders. "You did everything you could." "Did I asked? Or did I just look away until it was too late?" He sighed. "Evelyn, love doesn't prevent sin. It just makes it hurt more when it happens." I leaned into him, closing my eyes. I keep replaying it all. The laughter, the dinners, the little moments. It's like watching ghosts live better lives than we do. Daniel didn't answer. He didn't have to. The silence was enough. This morning, a letter came in the mail. No return address. Just my name written in handwriting I'd recognize anywhere Nathan's. My heart raced as I tore it open. Inside was a single page folded twice. The writing was uneven, rushed. Mom, I don't know if you'll ever forgive me. Maybe you shouldn't, but I wanted you to know I'm sorry. I thought love meant taking what made me happy, no matter who it hurt. I was wrong. I've lost everything, and now I understand what that really means. Please tell Jared I don't expect his forgiveness either. I just hope one day he sleeps without hating me. You were right. Love without respect isn't love at all. Your son always, Nathan. I read it again and again until the words blurred through my tears. When Daniel came home that evening, I showed it to him. He read it silently, then placed the letter on the table. Do you believe him? He asked. I wiped my cheeks. I don't know, but I needed to hear it. We didn't talk after that. We just sat together, listening to the rain begin outside, soft, relentless cleansing. Tonight, the house feels different. Lighter somehow, though the pain hasn't gone. It's like grief has finally learned to whisper instead of scream. I went up to the attic again and placed Nathan's letter inside the old photo album beside that picture of him and Jared laughing at the beach. Then I closed it gently. Some lessons come too late. Some wounds never heal. But maybe that's not the point. Maybe the point is to survive them, to stand amid the ashes of what was and still find the strength to say I did my best. Because in the end, that's all any mother can do.